Welcome to another podcast about the book Single Zombie Apocalypse Complete Guide to the World of the Unmarried. I'm Barry Sines. I put together this book with a lot of help, and this is covers a lot of different topics, and there's it's impossible to cover everything. But I just touch on them to maybe give some people ideas if they haven't started into the dating world or if they've been married for a while and they're getting into it again and they want to see what's out there, what's going on. And it's to be honest, it's not a happy world out there, and I have to emphasize that we are facing so many problems and destructions of families, marriages, relationships with kids, uh, siblings. The whole family unit is being just attacked, It's disintegrating. It's so if we've experienced it in the past, we certainly are experiencing even more now. And I touched a little bit about narcissism, and that is a topic that is very potent. And it's almost turning into, I don't know how to describe this, but narcissism is uh, it's like a self perpetuating thing. And if you get two people that are in a relationship, in an intense relationship, fight a lot, and they both can blame each other for having narcissism. So it gets interesting on how the word is getting so generalized. But from what I take narcissism to be is just kind of a self-centeredness, insecure, anxiety-filled person with the efforts to manipulate and control so they can keep their life in order type of thing. So there's a great amount of efforts to protect themselves and to prevent themselves from getting hurt themselves. So they try to manipulate, control others, and that's why it's self perpetuating. Because if they abuse somebody, this narcissistic person, then that person they abused will go into their next relationship trying to protect themselves. And we can kind of get an idea of what we're talking about. But it's very, very self perpetuating. And then it reflects in our media. It goes into television shows and movies because it's people are experiencing this. So they're writing about it and then they put it in movies and then it, promotes more of it. And so it is overwhelming and it's hard to break out of. I have to like, do everything I could possibly do to not turn into that. And it takes a great amount of self restraint, and I would even say my faith in Jesus Christ comes in again with that because I know I have a higher ideal to hold on to. This is the only thing that prevents me from turning into what I hate, and I don't want to do that. There's and if you get any of these experiences of being abused emotionally or mentally or physically or whatever, you have this PTSD in the form of traumatic relationships, but it's very real because you're trying to fight these feelings even when nobody is there, and these thoughts go through your head, and you may be going through arguments in the past and still trying to win those arguments, or you may be having an imaginary future relationship and you're arguing with some imaginary person that you might get in a relationship in the future, and it's so potent, it's so strong, and it takes an, an incredible amount of effort to not turn into it because you're trying to protect yourself. So it's amazing the kind of stronghold this idea has, this concept of narcissism. And my relationship with Jesus Christ has really helped me. When I feel that relationship, I pursue that first, and his peace and his ability for to give me that power to forgive and to let go and to not let these feelings fester inside of me like a poison and let it grow. So, one of the greatest epiphanies that I had um, in my relationships is that the person that I have dealt with or have seen in other relationships around me is they have been abused themselves in the past. So everybody's been affected by this, and you could always tie it together with some kind of past experience with this abuse. And so now we get a lot of people continuing that cycle, and then more people blaming those people. That's where I was talking about the men and women are pointing fingers at each other and not able to come to any kind of conclusion or any kind of solution. And there is almost zero compassion, which is the antidote. I go on in the book about other things too. This section is called Mixed Messages, and many men and women are confused. What I mean by that is, as a boy grows up into this world into a man, and a girl grows up into this world into a woman, there's mixed messages of what do they think, what do they do, what do they act like, what do they pursue, what's their priorities, which role do they play, should they throw out the roles, should they become this or could become that. And so there's a lot of mixed messages on what men and women should become. So when there's lack of role models, then we're left to the culture to and the media that shapes the culture to tell us what those things are. For the women, they would like to show femininity and vulnerability in dating, but they don't want to come off as too weak, sensitive, dependent, needy, or desperate. So also the message they could be getting is I want to be strong, independent, empowered, respected, ambitious, but then they don't want to be seen as calloused. And so they want to portray one thing or another, but they don't want to be seen as either calloused or too sensitive and weak. So the men are just conflicted. The men grow up in a world where they are pushed to stand up, be responsible, fulfill your responsibilities as a man, and it's push, push, like this pressure. You need to do this. Step up, be a man, shape up, be responsible, and also the message is stand down. Get out of the way of the women. Don't get in their way of their ambitions. You know, if she's moving a mattress by herself, should a man go up and ask if she needs help? Is she going to be offended by that? I've seen that example. That very example is a real example. A guy was walking up, saw a girl trying to heft a mattress to her new apartment, and he was like, "Hey, do you need help?" And she was like, "No, I got it." Like real short, like that. And he was like, "Whoa, okay." So there's these mixed messages that we get in the culture. It's like she's reflecting that very thing. She doesn't want to come off as too weak. She can do it on her own. And him offering is it him showing that she can't do it on her own? Like, is he gonna have that conflict before he approaches a girl again? Be like, "Well, I don't wanna come off as I think she can't do it on her own, but I would also like to be a gentleman and offer." And he might have that conflict of, "Well, I want to be a gentleman. I don't want to be pushed aside and pushed into the friend zone either. I wanna be seen as a man and responsible and strong, but, how do I approach this situation?" So, and he may be thinking, "I don't wanna push her out of the way and just do it for her, just to show that I'm a man. So I need to respect what she's doing." So the end of the story is that they did end up getting married. And so you might think, well, what happened in between that time? And she was in the same church congregation and they eventually got to know each other. And I was involved in their process because I made a wedding video for them. And so I knew their story and it was an interesting story. She realized that he was different from any other guy that she's met. And that's probably why she ended up really convinced and wanting to marry him. And I knew him. He was very good, good head on his shoulders, very good man, good hearted, and a gentleman. And it took that time in that same area in their life to in the a common place in church to be able to see the real man and real woman that they were. And she was as feminine as can be after they let their guard down and they saw each other for who they were. It just took that time to see that. So what if you can't see that in the superficial dating world when we have our shells up and our guard up and we're giving off these mixed messages or we're conflicted within that first impression? So you get a lot of men and women who could connect, but they're turned off. So there's a couple more examples that I have might illustrate the point. Some the extreme examples of the opposite of where a girl is moving into an apartment and she invites a bunch of guys over and just starts asking them to do everything. Like, well, the guys gotta feel like they're needed. So I'm gonna make them feel like they're needed. So I'm gonna ask them to be doing a bunch of different things. So it almost turns into a borderline slave driver at that point. But she may not intentionally think about doing that, but it's good men, they want to help and they will. And it so how do you act? How do you behave? How do you respond? And what do you do in these situations in both the men and women? How do they ask a guy without turning into a slave driver when she really needs help? And how does she turn on that natural instinct for a guy to really want to help and love it? So I have another example on the other end. So I saw this guy helping his girlfriend move into another apartment, and his back was bad. Even though he was working through a lot of pain, and so the couple girls wanted to help out more because his hurt back, but he was like, "No, no, you're you're women, you're women. I'm gonna do this." And what I was thinking is like, yeah, he wants to be a gentleman. That's the gentleman part of him that wants to do that, but he's getting way over the top, like controlling now, where he wanted to get into that driver's seat and force himself in there while putting down and pushing aside the women to do it. So how does he naturally fill that role without having to push the women out of the way and becoming borderline abusive himself? But the women there, they knew what he was really saying. and they didn't take offense because they knew his overall character in context. But what if in the dating world you can't see beyond the first initial impression? So there's a lot of miscommunication, a lot of turnoffs, a lot of disappointments, a lot of fear because of those behaviors. We're trying to fight to get into these roles or get out of the roles, or what does a man act like? What does a woman act like? What attitudes they bring on with them? So it's a constant battle. So I feel the need to talk about the roles and what I said about this in the book. And I start out with the sexes need each other, and we've lost the idea that we need each other in this world. And I believe that the masculine and the feminine, uh, good charactered men and women need each other, and this perpetuates family and love, and this points back to the plan of God with the plan of salvation with Jesus Christ. And both men and women are way deeper creatures than we think. We think they're very simple and we got them figured out, probably, but I don't think we have. I think there's a lot deeper, we are a lot deeper souls than our culture says we are. And we've lost that knowledge. So we devalue men and devalue women in many different ways. And we devalue the unique natures that the men and women have and how they complement each other. But we've devalued that as well. And in a way, all of this in the culture is a result of the anti roles in the 60s. That was just a marked time that is obvious. Of course, it could happen before that too, but in our culture today, the word role, is a poisonous word, and it is perceived as something that some tyrant has made up and declared how things should be, and everyone is forced or pressured to fulfill that. But our natures, we don't want to be forced to do anything, so we respond by abandoning these concept of roles and then never consider it again. So the real concept of roles denote that there is a nature that is inside men and women that has a distinct power and ability that are unique in each sex. So I compared this concept of roles to a dance. And if you have to imagine in your mind a man and woman who are very good at dancing together, either salsa or something. Just imagine that and how this works. So I'll give you this imagery as I read this. In relation to this nature and roles in dating and marriage, the dance of the masculine and feminine power has largely been lost. The concept equally empowers men and women in their role, and it is unstoppable as a union. It is beautiful when realized and generates a deep enjoyment in relationships. It is a dance of the simultaneous empowerment and also yielding to the other's unique power and intuition. It creates sparks of romance. You may you may see why, with all the mental and emotional plagues going on, that this dance has been getting more difficult to create. This dance is a way of simply showing a profound principle that that it is critical in in a courtship and romance. It shows the men and women the principles of masculine and feminine roles and how they dance in equal harmony, power, and respect. It shows the different but equal power in masculine strength and feminine strength and how they work in unison to spark romance. The masculine and feminine dance is in happy and healthy marriages, and I would say in healthy dating experiences that lead to more connection and wonderful, happy relationships. Both the man and women experience each other's unique power and are both empowered by it. This concept has the capability of being churned up again and again if this is understood. And I must add that healthy romance, not superficial romance. Superficial romance could be churned up by a guy who knows what to do all the right things, look look the part, act the part, and churn the superficial romance and be able to have relationships, but won't last forever. And a woman can do the same and look the part, act the part, say all the right things, and still get into relationships, but it doesn't last. So, my earlier definition by Jason Criswell was formulating romance. Romance is passion with genuine goodness. One cannot exist without the other for romance to exist. The former is immediate appeal, and the latter is lasting appeal. There needs to be both to make romance. And that says a lot there, is that a lot of people can really, they really know how to get the passion part going. And, but the genuine goodness doesn't last because there isn't anything deeper than that. And the genuine goodness is a good character person, and I would say connected with a a Christ-like person that would make a lasting appeal and ability. So the negative example of this is Battle of the Sexes, and I've mentioned this before, but this is a good contrast to dividing men and women and their unique powers, because the Battle of the Sexes turn this around to be who is the superior sex is what the questions are, and you see this in board games and on radio shows and whatever else. It fuels this resentment and division and the false idea that one sex is superior than the other, which is an absolute lie. And I so the real inspired concept of that is that both men and women have unique powers that if they give each other that mutual respect and that Christ-like love, then they will see that unique power and both be empowered by it and also yield to the other power. So, but it creates this stir of romance. And the deeper a person goes spiritually, the more they will see the person beyond their weaknesses and really see the man or woman that they really are. And it takes time to do that. And just as the other examples, the superficial miscommunications in dating and the culture that has mixed messages, and so we behave in certain ways that come off wrong, or we use things manipulative ways to try to stir romance or attraction. All these mixed things that we do, but if each person is looking deeper and with a bigger perspective of the person, taking time to do that, then they will see the true man and woman they were born to be, that they were born, and who they could be in the future. And a lot of times, my friend always says, we were all born cool. We're born unique and really cool. It's a during our, I guess, our childhood or growing up, we start thinking ourselves or thinking that other people are uncool. So it's interesting. We just have to remind ourselves on how we have to uncover who we really are and really find that out. It takes time to do that, and it takes a pursuit in the true good example of Jesus Christ and implementing His characteristics into our souls, into our lives, and we'll remember who we are, and then we'll become greater men and women by doing that. And all of that comes around to it will stir romance again, and even long marriages and people who've been together for a while. This can stir up again and again because you're gaining that perspective and deeper understanding and overcoming weaknesses and you and you as Jesus Christ can make all things new, and that includes romance. So we'll end the podcast here, but if you wanted to buy the book, The Single Zombie Apocalypse, we're going to be you could buy that on Amazon. We're going to be talking about other topics. I'm going to talk about manipulating dating games, and that'll be an interesting topic because there's a lot of pain and suffering that comes from all these rules and that nobody is eye to eye on. Not everybody knows all these new rules that come out. So it is a really interesting topic. But anyway, God bless. We'll see you on the next podcast.